Hello, brothers. This is Peter Herbeck. Shout out to all of my good friends in Vero Beach and Catholic Men for Jesus. It's so good to know that you're continuing to stand, continuing to support each other in these epic times. I mean, who would have thought, brothers, just 6 months ago, we'd be living through what we're living through? It's an epic spiritual battle that's going on. And it's a time when the Lord is both purifying his church, his judgments are in the nations, he's shaking the nations, he's trying to wake us up. He's permitting this to happen to wake us up and to wake up the church. I want to just share a little bit about a dimension, I think what for me is the most important dimension of this battle. We're living in an extremely challenging time, and it's going to get more intense in the days ahead, in my opinion, but it's a moment of extraordinary opportunity. The Lord is purifying his church. He's sifting his church. And he's searching the earth for men and women. Tonight I'm talking to men, for men who are ready to be totally identified with Christ, who are ready to give their lives to him, ready to surrender all our fears and our insecurities and our frustrations and everything, to stand and identify with him now. Brothers, the very disease that's in the culture, the spiritual battle, is seeping into the church. And it's revealing divisions within the church. And some of the same tactics that are being used in the broader culture to intimidate people into silence are happening in the church. Deacon Dave asked me to share with you a story of what happened right here in our neck of the woods just a year ago. My wife, Debbie, who's been involved in reaching out to young women for the past 30 years, she runs very dynamic camps. She's a wonderful mentor and discipler of women. She was asked to speak at a large parish in the area a year ago to the parents of confirmands, of kids who are going through confirmation. And the DRE asked her to give a talk on identity. This DRE had heard Debbie give it at another location, and so she did. It was really focusing on helping kids understand that their identity is sons and daughters of God. And it was really focused on the Lord, on the grace of God, his mercy, what it means to be a child of God and walking in the freedom of the children of God. But at one point in the talk, she said, one of the reasons this is so important in our day is because so many people in the world are pressing in on young people to create their own identity. And it's very confusing. And it makes life even more difficult for young people in challenging times. That's basically all she said about that. Well, at the end of the talk, they had Q&A. There's about 90 parents in the room. And the first question, a woman in the back raised her hand and she stood up and she said, I work at in the health area in the local public school. And she looked right at my wife and pointed at her and said, you are one of the most hateful people I've ever heard in my life. And she just kind of went at her for a while. And if you knew my wife, she's anything but that. I mean, she's a gentle, loving, compassionate person. Well, she was kind of shocked. And then another woman stood up and said the same thing. And nobody said anything. So I'm at home that night. She comes home. I wasn't there. And she comes downstairs and I'm fighting the good fight, spiritually myself. I'm, had a beer and I was eating some chips, watching an NBA ball game. And she comes and sits down next to me. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. And I said, Deb, how'd it go? And she described what happened. And then she said to me, she goes, yeah, it was really hard. I've never had anybody kind of attack me like that. And my first response was, yes. I said, Debbie, you're my hero. Way to go, honey. You took a hit for the king. That's amazing. You stood up for a simple truth. And then it hit me. I said, wait a minute, this is parents of confirmands. I said, were there any men in the room? She goes, yeah, there were lots of them. And I said, did anybody say anything else? And she said, nobody said a word. In fact, she said, I was looking at some of the men while this was going on, and literally, she said, a couple of men, our eyes met, and they just looked away from me, and they didn't say anything. And I just wanted to jump out of my skin. I said, are you kidding me? Then we come to find out the next morning, the DRE sends an email to my wife, Debbie, totally apologetic. And she said, Debbie, your talk last night was outstanding, but I want to repent to you and apologize. When that woman's anger came out, she said, I was frozen in my seat and I couldn't move. That same woman, the angry woman, went to the pastor. She chewed out the pastor. You know what the pastor did? The pastor drew the DRE into his office and said, you will write an apology letter to everybody who came, and if you don't, I'm going to fire you. He was afraid of the woman. Every person in the place was afraid of that woman. Nobody knew what to do or to stand up. I love your theme tonight, standing for Jesus. But get a load of this. This demonstrates just how weak, how confused, how insecure, how intimidated, how easy it is to intimidate Catholics. This was all Catholics. And here they are, parents of confirmands who are on their way. They're about to enter into the church as full disciples of Jesus. Remember the old days, brothers, when the bishop used to slap you in the face at confirmation, you're a warrior for Christ? How can those kids ever be a warrior for Christ if we didn't have a man in that room that would stand up and just say something real simple? Say, excuse me, ma'am, thank you for your thoughts. But I heard Debbie tonight, and I don't think Debbie said one thing that you can't find in the Bible, in the Catechism, and the teaching magisterium of the Catholic Church. I think your issue's with the church, and it's not with her, right? Something that simple could have happened. People don't have to stand up and scream and shout, but it's time to bear witness to the truth. This is what it means to be a disciple, to stand and to bear witness to the truth. You don't have to make truth triumph. You just need to have the courage to be willing to stand up and articulate the truth. Now, that's the challenge we're facing. And every one of us, and I hope tonight, I'm so glad Archbishop Burns is with you. I've known him for many years. There's a brother who has courage. There's a brother who has walked the walk for a long time. And you couldn't have a better guy tonight. I mean that sincerely. I'm not just saying that because he's my friend, to be with you tonight. And I pray tonight that you can examine your hearts in your relationship with Christ. You are standing at the moment of a great opportunity. Jesus said, in this world, right in the Beatitudes, in this world, if you are if you're marginalized, if you're ridiculed, if you're persecuted for his name's sake, you're blessed. Here's what St. Peter said. Beloved, don't be surprised by the fiery ordeal which comes upon you to prove you as though something strange was happening to you. Remember, Jesus said, the world hates me, it's going to hate you. Right? And you're going to have tribulation in this world, but don't be afraid, but be of good cheer because I've overcome the world. He goes on. Peter said, don't act as if something strange is happening. This is the road of a disciple. But rejoice insofar as you share Christ's sufferings, that you may also rejoice and be glad when his glory is revealed. If you are reproached for the name of Christ, you're blessed because the Spirit of glory and the glory of God has come upon you. That's what we want in this world, brothers, is to be able to stand for Christ and have the glory of God upon us. What we need now is we need those manly virtues. They're not just manly, but I like to talk about them that way. We need zeal for the house of God. We need fear of God. We need courage, the willingness to sustain a wound, to stand up for what's true, what's good, what's beautiful. It's time for us to man up now and live with an eternal perspective and understand our battle is not against flesh and blood. There's not a human being on the planet that's my enemy ultimately as a disciple of Jesus. It's Satan and the demons that are behind this stuff. And you can take this to the bank. The battle's mainly on the political realm right now. Junipero Serra's statue came down. Guess what? The enemy's going to come after the church. And the world and all its enlightenment is going to be offended at the wisdom of God and the plan of God and the teaching of God. And we are going to be given a chance to stand. That is a precious, precious gift. In a nanosecond, you will be standing before the judgment seat of Christ. You have an opportunity to stand and lovingly, with humility, with meekness, to bear witness to the King, to Jesus, who is the truth and the life. Since you have the theme of standing, I just want to end with these verses from Ephesians chapter 6, the great spiritual warfare chapter of St. Paul. He said, finally, be strong in the Lord and the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the enemy. For we're not contending against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against world rulers of this present darkness, against the spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore, take the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. You hear how many times Paul's talking about stand, hold your ground. You don't have to go looking for trouble. It's going to come to your door. It's going to come to the church more and more because the Lord's purifying the church. Who's with him? Who's against him? You're going to see a lot of people walk away from the church because it's now not good for business. People are attached to their idols, their popularity, their comfort, their jobs, all of this stuff. And it's time to count the cost. May the Lord bless Archbishop Burns tonight and anoint him as he speaks to you guys. As you need to come together as brothers and you need to lead. It's time for men to lead. It's a time to do spiritual battle. And greater is he that's in you than he that's in the world. God bless you.